Welcome, my dear viewers. Thank you for being with my channel and watching my videos. I'm telling you a story from my life. Watch this video to the end. You will understand what I'm telling you, so as not to miss my new videos. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your explanations in the comments. Then let's go.
Oh, I messed up really bad and now I'm scared. You can call me Cindy and I'm 23 years old. My boyfriend, Cameron, is 25. We're both from this tiny town in Oklahoma. We kind of knew each other because he was a bit older, but we weren't close. Around 3 years ago, we started talking more when he came back from college. He'd visit the grocery store where I worked. I was a cashier, and he'd always come to my line. He was always so nice and polite. I tried dropping hints that I liked him, but he didn't seem to get it. One day, when my line was slow, I finally got the courage to talk to him. I asked about his major, and we ended up chatting for about 10 minutes. He finally realized I was interested and gave me his number. I called him right after work, and we talked for hours. We went out to dinner that night and just clicked. We fell in love that weekend. Crazy, right? We started seeing each other every weekend. After he graduated, he got a great job in the city, bought a cool car, and got a nice apartment. A few months later, he asked me to move in with him. Even though our parents weren't thrilled about it, they supported us. Cameron said it was a test to see if we could handle living together before marriage. I was so happy. Living in the city was amazing. We both found good jobs, and I loved working at a coffee shop near our place. We made friends, and life was fun. We'd been living together for about 9 months when we started looking at other apartments just to see what else was out there. I also joined a yoga class nearby. There was this guy, Ed, who was always at the coffee shop and also came to the yoga class. He was older, in his late 40s, and really friendly. He was successful, drove a nice car, and dressed well. I got curious about yoga because he seemed so passionate about it, and I decided to talk to him one day. I asked Ed if he recommended the yoga studio he went to, and he said it's a good idea. So I decided to check it out myself. It was near our apartment, which was great. On the other hand, Cameron, my boyfriend, used a gym near his office, but it was far away and sometimes took forever to get there. I started going to yoga classes and really enjoyed them. After work, around 2 p.m., I'd head to the studio. This fit perfectly with my work schedule. I'd work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then do yoga until 3:30 p.m. After that, I'd go home and prepare dinner for Cameron. One day, Ed, the guy from the coffee shop and yoga class, asked how I liked the studio. I told him I loved it and thanked him for the recommendation. He mentioned that he might join classes around that time, particularly hot yoga, which started at 1:30 p.m. He also said he went to the gym for weightlifting and boxing a few days a week. A couple of days later, I bumped into Ed at the yoga studio. We talked like we always did at the coffee shop. Somehow, he convinced me to try a hot yoga class. I gave it a shot, and it turned out I really liked it. We started spending more time together, going to classes and stuff. Looking back, it wasn't the best idea. But at the time, I didn't really think about it. This went on for a few weeks until one day, I can't explain why, Ed and I ended up at Cameron's apartment on a Thursday afternoon. We made a terrible mistake, something I deeply regret now. I felt so guilty about it, but Ed suggested we meet at his place the following Monday to avoid disrespecting Cameron. Ed's apartment was in a dodgy neighborhood, sparsely furnished with just a few old chairs, a TV, a small table with 2 chairs, a simple double bed, and an old dresser. It wasn't what I expected, and I wished I had left in hindsight. But I didn't want to be rude. It turned out that Ed wasn't as well off as I thought. He spent his money on his car, clothes, and jewelry, not his living space. Afterward, I told Ed we needed to end our relationship because I loved my boyfriend and didn't want to mess up what we had. Ed cynically laughed and said, "You can't possibly love your boyfriend if you did what you did, can you?" I insisted that I did love Cameron, but Ed said my desire for him outweighed my feelings for Cameron by far. It was a harsh reality check for me. I gathered my stuff and left Ed's apartment, feeling tainted and incredibly foolish for what happened. It wasn't like me at all. I promise it's not. I can't explain why I did this with Ed. It happened during a time of the month when my hormones often feel uncontrollable. Though that's not an excuse. I'm just trying to make sense of my actions. I spent the rest of that day in tears until Cameron came home. We had dinner, watched TV, and relaxed, but Cameron seemed distant. He'd been feeling unwell, so I assumed it was because of that. On Tuesday, he still seemed off and distant. We hadn't been intimate for almost a week, which was unusual for us. Looking back, I think he might have known about Ed and me, which is why he was keeping his distance. On Wednesday, I got home just before 3 p.m., but my apartment key was missing from my key ring. I panicked, thinking it had broken off somehow, but all my other keys were still there. Then it hit me, Cameron had taken the apartment key. I tried calling and texting him, but there was no response, which was strange because he usually sent a quick text even when he was busy. I decided to go to the apartment office and ask for help. They had keys to all the apartments, so I explained my situation to one of the coordinators. They took me into the manager's office and closed the door. After a few minutes, they called me back in and asked me to sit down. The manager told me something shocking. Cameron had moved out that morning and left a letter to terminate the lease after its 1-year term. I couldn't believe it. I was devastated. They showed me the bags he left for me in their office, filled with my stuff and gifts I had bought for him over the years. It hit me that he must have known about Ed and me. And I fell apart in front of these kind ladies. They helped me carry the bags to my car and offered me water, snacks, and tissues. I sat in my car for over an hour, crying and trying to figure out what to do. I attempted to reach Cameron through calls and messages, but he didn't respond. I thought about staying in the vacant apartment until the lease ended, but he didn't reply to that either. I knew he was angry, but he hadn't blocked my calls, which gave me a glimmer of hope. I considered going to his office to talk to him, but I didn't want to cause a scene and risk his job. Instead, I drove around aimlessly for a while, unsure of where to go. Eventually, I checked into a hotel near our apartment, even though I couldn't afford it for long. I spent the night crying, wondering how Cameron had found out the truth. I hoped it was because Ed had told him, not because of hidden cameras in our apartment. The shame I felt was overwhelming. The next day, my mom called, furious after talking to Cameron's mother. She demanded to know what had happened, and I confessed. She yelled and screamed at me for over 45 minutes before hanging up abruptly. My dad expressed his deep disappointment in me too. I asked if I could move back home, and he agreed, but only if I sought professional help, like therapy. I accepted his condition, apologized again, and returned home 11 days later. During this time, I kept trying to contact Cameron, but he never replied. I read some advice suggesting that it's best to give a betrayed partner some space, even though it was tearing me apart inside. When I returned home, it felt like everyone in town knew about our breakup and why it happened. It was a total nightmare. I'm not sure how to reconcile with Cameron. I'm afraid he might never want to talk to me again. I love him deeply, and I know I have to try my best to win him back. No matter what happens, I'll carry the regret of my actions for the rest of my life. I'm back home now, living with my parents, and I've taken a job as a cashier at a dollar store. It seems like everyone in town is still talking about me, and I can't help feeling incredibly embarrassed. People somehow found out that Ed was the person I cheated with, and they did some online research. To my shock, I discovered that Ed is actually 62 years old, not in his late 40s as I thought. Even worse, he has a criminal record going back 17 years, with articles about his past arrests and trials still available online. I could have easily found all this information with a simple online search, but I was too distracted to do so. I still find it hard to believe how I acted during that time. I feel like a complete fool. Not only did I betray the man I love, but I did it with someone who's far from admirable. I hope the town's gossip will die down in a few months because I can't bear living here much longer. It's taking a heavy toll on my mental well-being. Some days, I contemplate locking myself in my room and not facing the world. My parents are deeply embarrassed by my actions, and they've made it clear that if I ever repeat something like this, they'll disown me without hesitation. They believe I've brought profound shame to the family, which has only intensified my feelings of self-disgust. I've been dealing with severe depression as a result. Throughout this entire ordeal, Cameron has not reached out to me. We haven't exchanged a single word since the night he locked me out of the apartment. I just wish he would pick up the phone and express his anger or any emotion. At this point, all I want is to apologize to him face to face. I've been in therapy for a couple of weeks now, and it's been helpful. My therapist is compassionate but also straightforward. Following her advice, I've refrained from trying to contact Cameron and have started focusing on self-improvement. She pointed out that I've already extended my apologies through text and voicemail, and Cameron is aware of it. But evidently, he wants nothing to do with me at the moment. Over the past week, I've concentrated on my job, maintained a healthy diet, gotten enough rest, and taken long walks. I do feel better, but I still miss my partner. I'm taking each day as it comes, hoping for a reconciliation with Cameron, but also preparing for the possibility that it may not happen. I have no intentions of dating anyone anytime soon, despite receiving requests from 4 customers at the store. My heart and mind are still firmly under Cameron's influence. I don't anticipate providing any further updates unless we manage to reunite. Best wishes, and thank you to all of you. I didn't get paid for my work, but we lived rent-free on our property, and I knew I'd inherit the majority ownership. It was a perfect family setup, and we all loved living here. My oldest was a 21-year-old girl, followed by a 20-year-old boy, a 17-year-old boy, and our youngest, a 15-year-old girl. Life was great, and my marriage with Connie was loving and happy. My job was good, and the farm was thriving. But about 3 years ago, my brother Bill got diagnosed with cancer. He didn't take care of himself well and only sought treatment when his symptoms got unbearable. He went through tough treatments, but he kept working. Sadly, Bill passed away earlier this year, and it was very emotional for all of us. Bill and I were close, and I helped him with various challenges he faced in life. Despite his issues, we loved him unconditionally. In Bill's will, he named me as the executor and left me 100% of his assets, including a bank account with over $70,000. I found something strange, though. Bill had set up this account with my youngest son, Joe, as the beneficiary. This confused me because Bill wasn't closer to Joe than my other kids. I wondered why Bill chose Joe, and it made me anxious. One day, I found 2 old photos of my wife, Connie, at Bill's house. They were inappropriate, and they were taken in Bill's bedroom. My world fell apart. I took the evidence to my parents, and they were as shocked and disgusted as I was. I decided to confront Connie. I took her to Bill's house, thinking we were just going to clean up. But when we sat down, I showed her the bank statement and the pictures. She looked at the statement, clearly surprised by the money Bill had saved. I knew there was much more to talk about, but I was devastated, and I needed time to figure out what to do. I asked Connie if she noticed anything odd on the bank statement, and she initially said no, just the amount. But then I urged her to read it aloud from the top. As she read, she saw Bill's name and the payable on death to Joe part, which made her realize that she was caught. I asked her if there was something she needed to confess, and she initially denied it, shaking her head. But after some persistence, she admitted to her affair with Bill 18 years ago. She explained that it was a stupid and selfish mistake that only lasted a couple of weeks. Connie claimed she had distanced herself from Bill since then, only interacting with him when other family members were around. I asked her if Joe was Bill's son, and she said no, she was certain he was mine, emphasizing that even if he wasn't, she considered him mine since I had raised him. I didn't show her any sympathy or comfort and left her to compose herself. After she cleaned up and came home, we slept in the same bed, but I refused her attempts to get close to me. The next day, I decided to divorce her, and I talked to my parents about it. They were shocked and couldn't believe what had happened. Connie begged me not to go through with it, but I was firm in my decision. Later, I met with a lawyer recommended by our farm attorney to begin the divorce process. We discussed the division of our assets and the possibility of spousal support due to Connie's lack of outside work. Money wasn't my main concern. I just wanted the marriage to end. I returned home and informed Connie of the attorney's advice, and she was upset. Then I told her I would talk to our kids about the situation that weekend, starting with Joe. He and I went to a creek on our farm, and I explained the situation to him. He was devastated and worried, especially about whether I would still love him if he wasn't my biological son. I assured him that I would always love him and that the issue was between his mother and me. The divorce was solely due to her affair and had nothing to do with him. We spent a couple of hours talking, and I mentioned that I would speak to his siblings next. After Joe told me he was ready to talk to his siblings, we all gathered by the pool, pretending everything was normal. However, my wife's odd behavior was evident, and our kids picked up on it right away. We spent the afternoon playing games, but the dark secret loomed. It was after dinner when Joe expressed his readiness to talk to his siblings. Unfortunately, they all had plans with friends that evening, so we decided to hold the conversation the next morning. As a family, we attended Sunday church services, returned home, and then I told the kids that I needed to speak with them privately on the back patio. My daughter inquired if their mom would be joining us, and I explained that she would meet with them later, causing some uneasiness among the kids. I shared the news with them, and their shocked reactions turned to disbelief, anger, and sadness. It was tough to see them process the information. I clarified my intention to divorce their mom, and they all started to cry. We had a lengthy conversation, and eventually they understood my decision. My daughter expressed her anger and reluctance to have anything to do with her mother. I informed them about getting DNA tests for each of them to determine their biological parentage, emphasizing that it wouldn't change my love for them, regardless of the results. That evening, their mom met with them to have an emotional conversation. I was outside but could overhear parts of their discussion. The kids expressed their love for her, but made it clear they would never see her the same way and might not forgive her for her actions, which was tough for her to hear. During the divorce process, my wife tried persuading me to stay together and seek counseling daily, but I remained firm. A significant offer was made to purchase the house my family lived in, and we decided to accept, moving out 60 days later. My wife moved to a nearby apartment and struggled with depression, requiring medication. I moved back to my parents' home temporarily and decided to build my dream log cabin on the farm. I now live there with my 2 youngest kids, while they spend a few nights a week with their mom. My ex-wife wants to reconcile, but I no longer have romantic feelings for her. After all the stress and drama, it turned out that all my kids are biologically mine, but it didn't change my feelings toward my ex-wife. Although I still care about her and want her to be happy, I can't trust her again. Despite everything, I feel content with where I am now and the relationships I have with my kids and my ex-wife. Sharing this story has provided some relief and gratitude for how things turned out, and I wish you all the best of luck.